I'll go ahead and give us at least one tweet here. Was it youtube.com at Dewey Podmonster Live, something like that?
Something like that. I think it's youtube.com at Dewey Podmonster /live.
Okay. /live?
Yeah.
At live? Oh,
Could
there
be
we
live.
are. Look at that. We are. All right. I'm not going to do that again because that just echoed in my ear and that was not cool. Oh, fucking just did that Control V thing. That didn't work. I guess it didn't work for me to write down the address either.
This is already entertaining.
Yeah. That's why we
do it live.
Yeah.
Fuck it.
Fuck it, dude. Hopefully this is the right link. I don't really. Okay, so that's up. We'll see if anyone shows up to this shit show that's already off to a good start. So,
the best start.
Best start is no start, apparently. All right, I should probably do the thing, huh?
Yeah, probably.
All right. Welcome back. My name is John, and this is the Dewey Pod Monster Podcast. This is your weekly and the original podcast about consumption. With me this week is the host of the Dewey Pod Monster Podcast. His name is Sean, and he is also the authority on Michigan craft beer. Sean, how are you doing today?
John, it's true what they say. The pump is better than coming.
Yeah. Are steroids better than beer?
Probably. You don't get fat doing steroids.
Well, not right away. Sometimes after the fact.
Well, yeah, when you let it go. I mean, all things, you know.
That's true. So, what have you been up to this week?
You know, I was trying to think of stuff that I watched. There wasn't really much because a lot of my time was consumed with watching the thing we're going to talk about today. But I did get a chance to watch. I watched all of Alone season 1, which I talked about the newest season recently. And I thought when I watched season 1 initially, they were just kind of like random Joes off the street that were on the show. But come to find out, some of them actually were survivalists. And the guy that won lasted like 50 some days, which for the first time they ever did that, it's pretty impressive, I think. I couldn't last 50 days with nothing.
I don't think I would last 5 days.
Yeah, same. I might last 40 minutes, maybe.
That sounds about right.
Other than that, I actually went to the movie theater, if you can believe that.
What? No, yeah. I don't. For you or for kids?
It was a family outing. We saw Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. That was surprisingly still in theaters. Have you seen the first Enter the Spider-Verse? I think is the first one. Have you seen that one?
That's the animated one, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I never got around to that one. That was right around the time that I got on my I'm not doing Marvel stuff anymore bandwagon. But
well, technically it's Sony. But yeah, I know what you mean. That's actually it's a really good animated movie. I like that it has all these different characters, you know, different Spider-Mans from across the different multiverse. But it's a good movie because it's not just the same formula. It's Miles Morales, you know, the young kid. And it's not Peter Parker and the whole origin story over again. This new one is a continuation. Obviously, it's the second one. I think that it's planned to be a trilogy. And this one ends on a really, no spoilers, but it ends on a really big cliffhanger. Like, I think my family and I were all sitting in the theater, and I know my wife looked at her watch, like, how much longer is this movie going to go? Because it felt like you get to a point.
I feel that way with every
we watch.
Well, no, with every comic book movie, but a lot of things that we watch. So
Yeah, I think the thing with a lot of these comic book movies is that they try to do this formula. They all follow the similar formula, and when they get towards the end, there's this like big ramp up. There's all this action. Then there's like this down note. But the way that they, I don't know, the formula that they use or the algorithm that they spit these scripts through or whatever, or just the make money formula is to have it end on like this rising kind of cliffhanger note where you feel like they're going to continue. And that's how this one did too. It felt like, oh, all this stuff happened. Like the movie is, how long is it? I have it pulled up here. It is, how long is it? How long is it? How long is it? It's long. How long is it? 2 hours and 20 minutes for an animated movie for kids. And there was like a little kid that was like 4 behind us gurgling, oh, upside down. And just, they, you know, you're 2 hours into this movie because the last credits are probably 10 minutes easy. You're 2 hours into this movie, and it feels like the way that they end it, it feels like they're just going to pick up and they're going to add another 20 minutes on and the whole thing's going to be done. But I guess it's like a hard cliffhanger. It's like done. And then I've read that I think the next installment's supposed to come out next year, which I think there was already several years between the first one and this one. And I've been reading all these people that are artists, like, you know, what are they called? Asset artists and stuff, are like, they're already working to the bone. I've heard of crunch in video games, and I hadn't really heard of it much in movies until recently. And I guess like the workers are really disgruntled about doing this next movie already. I mean, it's a big undertaking. It's a huge thing to do. But it was good. I think I like the first one better. I would, if you're looking for like an animated, action-y kind of thing that takes a little bit of a different style than what I think you would normally expect. I think the first Enter the Spider-Verse is actually a really good movie. Just even comic book aside, it's a really good movie. The second one's good, but I like the first one better. And that's pretty much all I watched this week.
2 hour and 20-minute movie for kids seems like it presents so many challenges just by being that length and expecting kids to see it.
I just think when you bring, I don't understand what goes through people's minds that bring really little kids to movies like this. I mean, I understand, hey, I'm going to take my kid out to the movie, but like the kid's not going to remember watching it.
I feel like they're just saying, I don't need this $30.
Yeah, pretty much. And it wasn't bad. It's like if they weren't sitting right behind us, I probably wouldn't have even known. And the kid wasn't disruptive by any means. But and having kids, you know, you kind of just laugh it off. You're like, oh, that's funny. It's not that bad. I mean, we've all been in movies where kids are screaming the entire time, and it's an awful experience. This wasn't bad. I just don't know why. Yeah, like you said, why you would just throw your money away on them unless you're just trying to get out of the house.
I kind of feel like there's some movies, like, I don't know. I'm assuming you went earlier in the day since you brought the whole family, not like 11 o'clock at night.
No, it was like 2:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah, so I feel like if I'm going to see a kids movie at 2:30 in the afternoon, there should be a reasonable expectation that there's kids inside the theater. So I think you almost kind of waive the right to be mad about kids being kids at that point. But it still seems counterproductive if your end goal is to actually watch a movie. But
and the thing, I think there were, including us, I think there were 8 people in the theater. Like an older couple, a guy and his kid, and the 4 of us. And it was the same day that Indiana Jones came out, and I heard that Indiana Jones is not doing very well at the box office. And I forgot that movie even came out. Like I saw the trailer or the advertisement in theaters, and I was like, oh, in theaters in August? Like I just started seeing commercials for it. It was like, no, in theaters June 30th. And I'm like, holy shit, it's June 30th today. And it's out. I guess I could watch Indy Jones instead, but I'd honestly probably rather watch Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's probably better. I haven't heard much of any buzz around this indie movie either before it came out or since it came out. But if it's anything like the LaBeouf one, I can't imagine it's. I mean, I'm sure half of it is just de-aging, and that, like, I'm sure Harrison Ford barely moves in the movie, but it looks like he moves a lot. You know. I can't imagine it's the same thing as Star Wars. It's not going to recapture what you loved about the first 3. So
yeah, I've heard it's kind of been a little disappointing. And on a side note, since we've been talking about Marvel and Harrison Ford with Indy, I've been seeing these articles like the new Captain America movie's filming or it's coming out or something. And Harrison Ford takes over from John Hurt because John Hurt passed away. John Hurt? William Hurt. I don't know. John Hurt, I think, the blonde guy that was in Altered States. He passed away, so Harrison Ford took over. And they're all like the big quote that Anthony Mackie has been attributing to Harrison Ford is when he's ready to film, he says, "Let's shoot this piece of shit." Not let's shoot this shit. Let's shoot this piece of shit. So I'm glad he takes it the way most of us take it these days.
Yeah. Well, it's just like his piloting career. It's just
let's land this piece of shit.
Right. So, well, I actually caught up on quite a few things. Not many of them good, but quite a few things. If you can't tell by the explosions going on outside my house, we're on the eve of 4th of July. So right before we came on, I watched Return of the Living Dead because it's day, takes place. You gotta be
I thought you were going to
festive.
say, I watched a lot of fireworks.
No, I don't care for fireworks.
Sky
So,
flowers.
yeah, I
Sky
understand.
flowers?
No, I mean, it worked for that movie, but I'm not a big fan. So I'm an adult. I have better things to do. So
Like
currently
drink.
I have internet. Yeah, well, you can drink and watch fireworks, but I could also drink
You
and
can
watch
drink and
TV.
light fireworks.
That's,
Eh?
yeah. Get some more people watching us on YouTube then. So, I also watched Uncle Sam, which is a early 90s bad horror movie. Have you seen that?
I have not seen it, but I know of it.
It's pretty stupid. I have a clip that will go up of that tomorrow, but it is, if you're feeling patriotic, it's not that, but kinda. So
Does this movie feature Uncle Sam on stilts looking in someone's window?
yes,
Okay.
yeah, that's where the mask for the killer, I guess, zombie, whatever he is, it's where it comes from. Is from this creep that's on stilts. What's funny about that is watching him run away like a dipshit. And then I kind of was looking at him like, how does one get off of stilts? Like this guy in this movie, he looks like he's up a solid 8 to 10 feet in the air on these stilts. Like they're not short stilts at all. And he's like walking through the park and running away and trying to. What he was doing on him initially is like peeping through some girl's window so he could see her coming out of the shower. How he timed that is your guess is as good as mine, but he did. And yeah, he runs away, and I mean, in movie time, it's like 20 seconds, but it gives the impression that it's at least like 2-3 blocks, something like that, if not more.
Huge strides on those
Well,
stilts.
for sure. But aside from falling, which is what eventually happens, how does one get off of stilts once you're on them?
That's like a sub question of the week. How do you get off of stilts? I would think like if they're not super high, you just kind of lean forward and put your feet, flat and you kind of land maybe. But then how do you get up on them? Do you need a ladder?
Yeah, I would feel like you would need either in this case, I feel like you would need like a set of bleachers to sit off the side of. Like that's how tall these stilts are that he's on in this movie. But I feel like you would need either a ladder or some kind of stoop, something that you could either launch yourself off of or sit your ass down on to take the stilts off. It's not like you take one off and then just fall on one foot or something like that. That seems like it would end poorly. So,
honey, where's the nearest school? I need to get on my stilts again.
I mean, I suppose I could Google this, but I'm not gonna. I didn't care that much. So past that, I rewatched the movie Stay Tuned. That's on Tubi right now, which is a fun movie. It
Jeffrey
has
Jones, John Ritter.
Yeah, that's him. Jeffrey Jones, the pedo, and the dead guy, John Ritter, and zombie Wayne and Garth.
Is the wife John Ritter's real wife?
I don't know.
Amy Yazbek? Is that her name?
I'm not sure. I just watched it, but she's kind of annoying in the movie, to be perfectly honest.
Sam Dauber, Mork and Mindy.
Nanu. And then what's quickly becoming a subgenre of movies, I watched Cocaine Cougar. which I sent you just a picture of that. And apparently, animal on cocaine is like the new subgenre. I don't even want to go as far as to call it horror, but I mean, I'm sure you're not. But if anyone's interested in this movie, it's only like 50 minutes long. It's free on Tubi, and this cougar looks like it was animated on a N64, and that's about the best thing I can say about the movie.
I don't know, man. You said 50 minutes?
50 minutes, yeah. And that's including credits and all that shit. So
I'd just rather spend 50 minutes of my time doing something that I don't hate, I guess. I don't know. None of that shit. I don't have any interest in watching any of those movies.
I was not sober and I wanted to go to bed, but I didn't want to go to bed quite yet. I was like, what's kind of short? I was like, well, there's only 50 minutes. Let's see what happens. And
I'm interested in this cocaine subgenre of animal movies.
A little bit. But yeah, I don't recommend that. That was a very stupid movie. I don't even really know what it's about. All I know is I didn't like it. So I'm assuming the cougar that looks like it's from the N64 at some point does cocaine, but it's You remember when like early computer like polygon graphics, like when something would run, it looked like it was kind of running in place, and they would just move the background to make it look like that. There's a lot of that in this movie, which is just, again, buy some dude a cougar costume and let him run around like mauling your friends. It would be more entertaining for sure. So
that's a good idea.
I mean, I'd watch that over Cocaine Cougar again. And then we haven't ventured into Wrestler's Corner yet, so we'll get this out of the way before we go into the topic. But the WWE released a video on YouTube of, I'm forgetting the real, Mick Foley and The Undertaker, Mark Calloway?
Mark
Calloway. Sorry. Don't hurt me, Taker. I got the Mark part right. So
yes.
Anyway, the two of them are kind of watching and commentating over their Hell in the Cell match, which, if you don't know, this match is absolutely like insane. Like, yes, it's still scripted. Yes, it's still fake in the sense that the outcome's kind of determined. But you ever want proof that these guys like hurt themselves in the like name of entertainment, this is the match to watch, because, well, more specifically, the amount of shit that, like, Mankind or Mick Foley or Cactus Jack or whatever you want to call him for this particular moment, what he puts himself through in this. Like, they spent a good 5 minutes talking about how they thought he had a booger on his face, and then they realized it was a tooth that went through his lip or something. So
yes, Mick Foley's tooth does come out of his nose.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's an intense. I mean, it's as intense as a scripted match can be, arguably. And those two guys are both characters that are absolutely worth listening to. So seeing them kind of chum it up and, talk about this match for a while, aside from the over-the-top ad placement on YouTube, was pretty entertaining. And then the only other thing that I watched this week that's worth talking about was the Dark Side of the Ring episode featuring the original Doink the Clown.
I watched that a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
Did you? So
this season's been kind of disappointing for me for Dark Side of the Ring. It's been like the stories are all interesting, but they're not that interesting. I think the first one was the best, the Chris Candido and Tammy Sitch one. But even I just watched the Junkyard Dog episode tonight, like before we came on. And it's okay, but I mean, it's just not. I feel like there are so many salacious stories and dark things to be said about wrestling. It's just like, I think they're trying to do people that are known, but they're just kind of running out of really like compelling stories to tell.
Yeah, even the stuff they did on that Doink episode, like, to be perfectly honest, I didn't know the majority of the, like, when they told me there were like 3 or 4 different guys that played Doink throughout the years, I was like, I didn't know that, but that doesn't surprise me at all, because why wouldn't you? You're paying for the costume essentially, not the person.
The character.
So
right.
Yeah, so I was like, well, that makes sense. And that was mostly just because when Doink and, apparently Doink the second and Doink the third and whatever, I was either a kid at that point or stopped caring. I don't really know which one it was. Yeah.
that's a particularly dark time in like WWF.
This is before the
/
Attitude
WWE.
Era, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like right before that. So that's when I think one of the big wrestlers at the time. Well, Vader was like a big wrestler at the time, but they had like a match where like
They have
Bastion
a sumo guy
Booger,
too.
Yokozuna, but that was even before that. Like
Okay.
Bastion Booger fights the Thanksgiving turkey is like a match on Survivor Series or something. I don't know.
I mean, that sounds kind of entertaining.
Yeah, well.
Not so
I
much.
think I have some umbrage with. I think you posted something about WrestleMania. Oh no, never mind. I'm talking about my ass. We were talking about something, and I think you said WrestleMania is in the summer, and WrestleMania is absolutely in
Spring,
April,
isn't it? Yeah, SummerSlam's in summer.
That's right.
But Wrestler Mania, which we've talked multiple times,
we threatened each other and the audience with.
Yeah, that's not in. Well, I guess it could be in spring. We just haven't got to it yet, so we'll see what happens. So anyway, we have a topic tonight.
We do have a topic.
So our topic this week is, I think this is going to kind of turn into an overarching topic of American Gladiators, but the reason behind it is there is a new docuseries that is on Netflix that is called Muscles and Mayhem, an unauthorized story of the American Gladiators, or of American Gladiators. This came out just last week, and maybe 2 weeks before that we had touched on it a little bit in our Maniac Cop episode, which you probably haven't heard yet, because I don't think we live streamed that one. But there was also another document, or a ESPN 30 for 30, I believe it was, that had 2 episodes that kind of tells the exact opposite story of what this docuseries tells. So we're talking about this mostly for the Netflix series, but I don't think it's going to be possible to not have the other one come up. Is that fair?
Yeah, this Netflix series came out on June 28th. So by the time you hear this, we're recording this on June 3rd. It's going to be, or I'm sorry, July 3rd. So it's going to be out for a few weeks. But yeah, the 30 for 31 covers more of who owned American Gladiators and kind of the struggle to get it to TV and then to get it to a dinner show, and how, and it was
with an underlying tone of who
owns
created
this.
It.
Yeah.
Not just who owns it, but who created it.
Who should be credited with it, and the kind of I don't know, salacious details that go into who created, who owns it, and who should get credit for it. That's kind of what the 30 for 30 documentary, called simply An American Gladiator Documentary, covers. Whereas the Netflix one is a little bit, it's longer. It's 5 parts. The ESPN 30 for 31's like 2 hour-and-a-half episodes or something. This American Gladiators one ranged from about 35 minutes for the first couple episodes to about 45 to 50 for some of the longer ones. And they go more behind the scenes as to the actual show, like how it got off the ground, not so much the gossipy kind of stuff, details about season to season and the gladiators themselves.
This feels more like the gladiator side of the story as opposed to the other one that feels like the production side of the story.
I feel like the ESPN one. Yeah, the ESPN one to me just feels more like Johnny Ferraro's story. Like, it's more gossipy, it's more salacious. They try to get into more of the gritty details and try to drum up some kind of thing about what
it almost has an undertone, a separate undertone, where it feels like he's almost trying to resell the American Gladiators again. Like,
it's almost like propagandizing or something.
Yeah. So, where this one, I don't get that impression at all. Like, they kind of, I mean, we're already jumping around, but they kind of say like, oh, well, this could still work today, which I guess it could, because there's enough shows that are similar enough to it. But they don't really act like in any way like, yes, this should still be on TV right now. Like, there's no point where they say anything like that.
Yeah, and just a last kind of, well, not last, but one of my last comparisons between the shows, and we'll talk about at the end too, I think, is that with the 30 for 31, again, they talk a lot to Johnny Ferraro, and the only gladiators that really participated in that one were people who thought that Johnny Ferraro was an okay guy. So that would be Gemini. Of the originals, we had Gemini and Malibu. I don't think any other original Gladiator talked on that one. And then, there was a couple like later season. Saber was, which I thought this was really weird. Saber was really prominently shown in the ESPN documentary, but in the Netflix documentary, you find out, if you were just to look it up on Wikipedia, he didn't show up until like one of the last seasons. But if we go through the Netflix series, we have like almost every original Gladiator except for Lace, and they talk to Sunny, I guess. So that's a first season female episode Gladiator. But we had Gemini, Nitro, who is the one that you probably want to hear from the most. Ice, Laser, Zap, Blaze.
He seems to be the best at putting together full sentences.
Yeah, I mean, he was like the face of the show.
Yeah.
So he's like and then they get, we'll get into it. But like I said, they're about 35 to 45 minutes each, 5 episodes on Netflix, exclusively on Netflix. So how do you want to tackle this? Do you want to talk about it kind of episode by episode?
I don't remember enough how each episode by episode went. So if you want to do that, you can lead us and I will follow along. But that works for me. If not, I was just going to wing it. So
I've got notes for each episode. So like I said, the Netflix version, it really glosses over this whole Johnny Ferraro thing. They do talk about him. They talk about he's the guy who wanted to make this blue collar sport out of the show, basically. But they really downplay the idea of this epic adventure show, or like the epic adventure, like we're going to make a movie out of the show. And then, no, wait, we're going to make a TV show. We're going to make movies and we're going to do amusement parks and all this shit. They don't really do that. In the first episode, they talk about the pilot. They talk about casting. They're trying to find bodybuilders and stunt people. And they talk about the pilot episode, which was featured basically in a dirt equestrian center. And they talk about how it was a disaster, and it was basically made so they had people in like makeshift football gear or baseball gear, and they wanted to make a sizzle reel basically that they could take to conventions to try and sell this to networks or syndication. Yeah, whoever wanted to buy it.
Yeah, it's interesting because the whole Johnny Ferraro side of it, they really don't go into like his almost like delusional grandeur that he had about what this show could be. And it's kind of fascinating that the show that he's on is the one where you really make him look kind of nuts.
Yeah, they make him look like a dope.
Yeah.
So I don't think he knew that that's what they were going to do, but I think he kind of sold that himself. After a while, you kind of realize this guy's a dope.
Well, yeah, it's like one of those people that he's a used car salesman. Like when you get in the door with him, he's fine. Like he tells you what you want to hear. Oh, this is a nice, 1993 LeBaron. I don't even know if they still made the LeBaron at that point, but it's a 93 LeBaron, and it's got, all-wheel drive and air conditioning and a tape deck. And by the time you get to like the test drive, you're like, what the hell? There's no floor in the car. The roof leaks, and
it's got 90,000 miles on it.
Has an 8-track. So
yeah, they really talk about how the games are a disaster. They didn't have much time to really set them up. The guy that was he on Walker, Texas Ranger? He was like a stunt guy, but he was an actor on Walker, Texas Ranger.
He was like the coordinator guy or something, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's like claiming that him and someone else created these things, and they're trying to set up these events, and people were basically, I think they said it was just a multi-hour thing. They thought they'd be done in a few hours, and they ended up filming until 2 or 3 in the morning just to get these games weren't working out. It was a total unmitigated disaster.
Well, they also skip over the whole writer's strike that was going on at the time, which you have to wonder, like, if there were writers that were working at the time, would this disaster of a pilot even get as far as it did at that point? And granted, it cleaned itself up and got better, but would it even get past that first hurdle if they weren't in such a pinch for content?
Well, I think that the show, they didn't. When the show was made, when they made the show, it was like the show got shopped around at these conventions, and it didn't get picked up. It was like the last possible person that saw it picked it up. Samuel Goldwyn is the company that picked it up, and maybe that they didn't, because they don't mention it in this Netflix show. It's hard to say if the writer's strike wouldn't have happened if it would have gotten picked up at all. But it's impossible to say because they don't really give a time. They don't mention it, so there's no timeline to say like the writer's strike happened. We figured we needed to make some money, so we bought this piece of shit show and really started to go with it. And this episode I thought was weird because, as I mentioned in the ESPN documentary, Malibu, the surfer kind of gladiator, is not in this series at all, except for like a 30-second clip that looks like it was taken from the ESPN documentary talking about the show. And other than that, he's never talked about it again. He only lasted like half a season. But I think when
he's
you
the one
watch
who
the
fell
show,
off
the first, the jousting.
The jousting.
Or the cannonball, and he concussed himself.
Yeah. Well, they go into more detail about the events and how ludicrously stupid some of these ideas really were. At least I guess they're only stupid from a practical standpoint. Like the idea of trying to kick a guy off what did they say? It was like an 8-foot podium or something like that, and just having him crash down. Like, yeah, you're gonna get hurt quite a bit. Like, and I can say as a kid, I never thought these guys got hurt. I thought they were just like, it's kind of like the WWE. Yeah, it's like it's not so much that you think it's fake. It's like the WWE logic. Like, no, these guys are like superheroes. They don't get hurt. So,
well, then that kind of leads us into episode 2, which is Let the Games Begin. And that's when they talk more about the actual show itself, how the actual games, how they start, things that they tried. They brought in this outside consulting company to help edit the show, and they kind of put their own ideas in. And I remember it when I saw it, but the first season, the first half of the first season, they actually had the judge would be dressed up like an executioner. And
I remember that.
If there was something like borderline a penalty, the executioner would like thumbs up or thumbs down over the or who they thought won, basically. Right. And it's like, why would you put an executioner?
I don't know. I kind of love it. It's that like right level of early 90s, like
camp or something.
We don't know what we're doing. So I think that's the episode 2 where they start talking about how they're comparing to the other things that were big in Hollywood. That's where they talk about Schwarzenegger like really taking off and Stallone. And it's like all of a sudden like people were looking for these type of humans that were just larger than life. And kind of like they talk about how it fueled them accelerating.
Yeah, and they also talk about in this first half where people were getting injured constantly. Like they're basically doing these
that's
events
reoccurring through the all 5 episodes.
But this is where they're doing it where it's like they're doing these events on concrete floors, like the Defend and Conquer or whatever, the football one where you'd run down, you try to get in the end zone, and then they'd have a wrestling thing. And the wrestling circular ring was like set above. It was like 8 inches off the ground, so people would be blowing knees out. And they showed all these events where people were just getting decimated, injured. Contestants were getting injured.
I don't remember which one of the gladiators it was, but I might have been Storm, might have been, I don't know, one of them. When they raised it up, like the first raised up the wrestling ring, the first time they did it, they showed her roll her ankle and it just cracked. And it was one of those you look at I don't know. I really hate seeing injuries like that because now I'm just like, oh, that just cripples me, and I can feel it even though it didn't happen to me. Like I can't really feel it, but I can kind of feel it. So,
that's gonna hurt, kind of thing.
It's like watching the RG3 injury. I hate seeing that replayed where you just see his knee literally explode inside of itself.
Well, I think that was Sunny, and they said that she was like an Olympic level cyclist. And they said like all the people that they got were basically bodybuilders, but that first round of contestants for that first half of that season, because they went on hiatus after the first half of the season to kind of retool stuff and get new gladiators. The gladiators were bodybuilders, but the contestants were bodybuilders too. So they were like the contestants were really just as big as the gladiators, and it said it really took a toll. So when the second half of the episode, they talk about the hiatus, and when they come back from the hiatus, they had a new producer, they had a new director. They changed a lot of the events. They had a medical crew on set, which is ridiculous that they never had one before, considering,
I know,
like
it seems like
concrete floors.
101. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, we're going to be slamming people's heads onto the concrete. Maybe we should have meds on site. But then they brought in additional gladiators. They got rid of Malibu and Sunny, and they said that the second half of the first season is when American Gladiators became the show that people really remember, rather than those first ones where they're doing they did it for a while, but Assault, where there's just like twigs in front of something, and that's supposed to be like an obstacle. And they said, they try to get rid of the chintzy kind of looks to it.
I always thought that one was funny. So.
Yeah. I'm hiding out in this little, there's like a barrel and things. And they also said that before the hiatus, the first half of season 1, they would bring crowds in, and the crowds would be like basically trapped in this arena for hours and hours and hours because they didn't have a streamlined way.
Mixed with the cardboard people.
Yeah. In the back row, like behind the bleachers, right. The second level of bleachers were all just wooden cutouts with people vaguely painted on it. Kind of like during COVID for baseball, people would buy a cardboard cutout. They'd put them out in the stands. But they start to get more into the they start to kind of foreshadow the politics of the politics of the gladiators, the escapades they get into, the time, steroids are first kind of brought up in the second episode. I don't remember the Gladiator Titan. I think he was a later guy too, but they said he had some kind of roid rage incident, and that's when they start to kind of foreshadow.
I don't remember him at all. And they talk about him like spoilers, I guess.
This whole thing's going to be a spoiler. We're going in depth on the whole deal.
Well, this isn't really a movie, so I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I mean, they talk about him straight up jumping off like a podium or something, and didn't he go after a ref and like chase someone down in the crowd or something like that too?
He chased the ref supposedly into the audience because he was unhappy with something.
He roughed him up too, didn't he?
They said a bunch of people had to hold him back, so I don't know if he ever actually got to him or not.
Can you imagine being like just random like guy in the crowd trying to hold back that guy?
I'd be like, dude.
I know. I'd be like, see you later, ref. You're fucked. So
yeah, and then that leads us into episode 3, which is titled "A Global Phenomenon." That's 1990, the second season of the show. That's when they start to get contestants who are just regular
average
fit
Joes.
Yeah, average Joes, but in good shape, like not huge muscle bound, bodybuilders and whatnot. They add Storm, Turbo, and Thunder, and then they talk about some of the contestants that kind of made their mark, like Eldon Kidd, who was like, he ends up later in life, again, foreshadowing down the road, he becomes like a coyote taking people across the Mexican border. And he got put in a Mexican prison, and his American Gladiator notoriety helped him out in prison, I guess. But season 3, that's season 2. That's the second season. Then they move into season 3 where
Can we stop on that for a second?
Sure. Yeah.
How amazing is it that notoriety from American Gladiators is what helps you survive in a Mexican prison
for 2 years?
Right. And that's in like episode 5 when they bring that up. But
yeah,
when they bring that up, I was like, they had American Gladiators in Mexico? That seems crazy enough on its own to me. Like I wouldn't think that would be a show that really travels too far outside of America.
Well, they said season 3. That's when they start revising the events a little bit more. Season 3, they drew higher ratings than the NFL for a syndicated TV show. Had higher ratings than the NFL.
Yeah, that seems unbelievable too, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy. I mean, that's how you hit it. They did eventually have international gladiators and stuff, and they did it in the UK. They had their own version. They had different versions going on all around the world. But season 3...
UK Gladiators just doesn't seem as intense as...
American Gladiators.
Well, I can't imagine, the average I don't know if there are British bodybuilders to begin with, but if there are,
All those
I can't
strongmen
imagine.
there's a bunch that are like Scottish and English and Irish and stuff.
Yeah. I don't see the whole roid rage like 1980s like He-Man thing. That seems very American and not like a civilized country. So
They put up they box like this still with their hands, with
yeah,
their fists facing them. Put up your dukes.
Yeah, girly man, whatever. So
This is where they start talking about a lot more of the steroid use to keep the competitive edge so that they could still compete with these guys. And like the turnaround time on these events were so quick that they couldn't like recover fast enough. So they start, doing roids and whatnot. And then this episode ends with Dan Clark, Nitro, kind of foreshadowing his little adventure to Mexico to buy steroids, and he came back to the border with a loaded handgun and a bunch of steroids, and they get into that in season 4. But in this season, in this episode, this is where they start talking about all the marketing. So the toys, the American Gladiator toys, the like Nerf kind of guns, the cereals, the lunch boxes, the backpacks, the umbrellas, all this stuff.
For those of you who weren't around in 1990s America, if something was popular, like they put that shit on literally fucking
everything.
We've talked before about how Freddy Krueger, a child pedophile who murders children in their dreams, they put him on kids' lunchboxes and thermoses and all types of shit like that. So if you didn't think you were getting some American Gladiators merch, you'd be gravely mistaken.
Let's pound some kids' head in the pavement playing Joust.
As you do.
Yeah. So then we move into episode 4, which is called Sex, Drugs, and Merchandising. That episode starts with the end of season 3. They talk about how the Gladiators started to get really popular, and they would show up on other shows. They showed clips of, God, who was it? Somebody was,
I think it was
on Blossom. Wasn't it? Somebody was on Blossom.
I forgot that one, yeah.
Nitro was on, Ellen, where they had a storyline where Ellen is dating Nitro, and she's trying to get on the show, and she's jousting with Ice, who Ellen and Ice were both closeted lesbians at the time. So it was funny. They thought they said how it was funny that, these two lesbian women were fighting over a heterosexual man.
Right.
Nitro, heterosexual, just in case Dan Clark wants to listen to this and come after us. And then they talk about the tour
of scenarios.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're on live. He can see my face.
If Rob Zombie hasn't come after us yet, I think we might be okay from Nitro. So
yeah, he seems like he's a nice guy. Nitro, that is.
Right.
So they start talking about the tour. The last sponsor that could possibly sponsor this tour, because it was so expensive, was 7-Eleven. So they take this show on the road. They're doing 120, I think they said 120 nights in all these, a different city every night to do this tour. It was like a 6-month tour. And they start to talk about how the tour really ground them down because they're, back to back. They're shooting up steroids. They're doing this stuff to recover, and they're just getting ground down.
Gladiators.
Yeah. Flying in replacements who had never done it. That's where Tower comes from. So they have him, and he talks about how he came on. They said they made pretty good money for the tour, but it was like and that's the other thing with the ESPN doc. The whole thing was about money, how they didn't make any money. Yeah. They didn't, it was just hard for them to get by. And they said
they were making like $5,000 a night or something.
I think
that's the number they said,
but
I thought maybe it was a week, and I don't know how that would be like in comparison to, say, I don't know,
a sitcom star or something.
Yeah, something like that. Like, how much does Blossom make at this point? I don't know.
Right.
But, for 1990, that at least you could keep your lights on, I'm sure. So
yeah, I think some of them said like they had houses, they had houses and cars and stuff like that. So they weren't like hand to mouth, but they were not doing as well as some other stars considering how big the show was. But they really just talk about the tour, and that's when at the end of the tour, as people are really getting ground down, they start the main core Gladiators, the originals. So Nitro, Gemini, Zap, and Ice, I think, decide that they're going to band together, but they don't tell everybody else, which is the big fuck, duh moment. They don't tell the other gladiators, and they basically say like, we want to renegotiate our deal, we want more money, but it was just the 4 of them, so the other ones didn't know, and Samuel Goldwyn just says, no, you can go, we don't need you, we'll replace you with somebody else, and they did.
Yeah, that episode was probably the most. I mean, that's definitely got the most shit going on in it, because half that episode. Well, yeah, half that episode is just like handy cam footage of half naked gladiators like dry humping each other or shooting steroids.
Yeah, and by handy cam, you don't mean like steady cam, you mean like camcorder.
No, I mean, yeah, camcorder, like similar quality to Black Double Down from Hell, that type of filmage.
Maybe better.
Slightly
better tech.
Slightly, but
yeah.
It's kind of crazy how. And again, I would think that there would be union representatives for these type of. I don't know if I want to call them actors, but these type of stars. Like, you would think someone would have came up to him and said, "Hey, you guys can do better than this," and kind of have one person being a figurehead for him. If nothing else.
But they signed they signed really bad contracts.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, they said they were all working for like
in
scale
perpetuity
or something like that. Yeah, right.
So the merchant, they owned the rights to their likeness for all these toys and all this stuff. And when they started the show, they thought it was going to be a big disaster. So if anything, the people that came on, the new people, should have been making more money. But it was probably all shoestring anyways, like, just like everything else.
I got to think a lot of them too, like, it's how many of them did they just go to a gym and find the biggest guy there and kind of realize this guy probably doesn't have a lot to begin with. Let's bring him on and see if he wants to get famous. And, at that time, it's not like you had the internet where you could have all these other like mediums to get seen. Like, you either, I'm sure there were bodybuilding magazines and stuff like that, but who really saw those other than other bodybuilders? This puts you into everyone's home, and that probably had its own level of, desire to, or like
something.
It's a foot in the door. Yeah. And even if you look at guys like Gemini and Nitro, and I forget who the other ones were, they ended up in a couple films. It looks like the kind of films we would talk about, but they ended up in a couple films. So,
well, Dan Clark, Nitro, I keep he's the only one that I really know his real name. So I always call him Dan Nitro Clark or Dan Clark Nitro Dan Clark. But he wrote scripts and he was trying to get them made.
Yeah.
But they said basically these guys, when they got let go from the show, they didn't have any other skill because they'd been doing this for 3-4 years. They started when they were in their early 20s, had no job experience except for this. So most of them went to doing personal training. I think, Zap she started showing up on Jag, I think. Yeah. And they talk about her Playboy kind of stint. And not to comment on people's looks and be like, looks are everything, but she for some reason looks the roughest of everybody on there.
Well, she said she didn't like that shoot either. She blamed it on her hair because they cut her hair. But
well, I just mean now, because they have the interviews of them now, and she just looks like something happened.
Yeah, it still looks really good.
Yeah, all of them look. Well, Gemini's real thin. I think he's probably got, like Ronnie Coleman.
Most of the guys kind of look like they've thinned down. Most of the guys kind of look like they've gone through some shit.
Yeah, and I think when you, like I was saying, Ronnie Coleman, he was like a huge bodybuilder, like a massive guy, and I think that just doing all that lifting and everything just really takes a toll on your body. So I think like Gemini, and steroids, doing roids all the time.
There's something about that though. Like again, last week I talked about that, or we talked about that Arnold documentary, and he's thinned down quite a bit too. But for a guy who smokes like 10 cigars a day, he still looks relatively well for his age. Yeah.
And we don't
some of these guys look like
on the bodybuilding, by the way.
Yo, God no. I mean, we can build a body, but not that way.
Sure. So, I don't know what kind. Mashed potatoes, maybe. Make one on mashed potatoes.
Yeah, mac and cheese. So,
oh, that's interesting.
So, episode 5.
So then we move on to episode 5, The Final Legacy. This is basically starts with 1992, which was season 4. That's when they talk about how again, Ice, Nitro, Gemini, and Zap are out. They bring in Siren, Saber, Cyclone, and a bunch of other random ass, roll the dice or throw darts on a dartboard at like weather configurations. And that's how you get some of these people's names. And they talk about how basically that like Nitro came back and then he became a commentator. They brought back Zap, but she was a competitor on an episode. Ice comes back as a gladiator. They kind of try to bring them back. From 1993 is the 5th episode. The ratings start to really go bad. That's when they bring Nitro and these other guys back. And then this is where the claim Nitro says that he thinks the show could still be on today. And the show was canceled after 7 seasons. Then they just kind of talk about after the show, some of the gladiators come back for this Orlando dinner show. And
yeah, that sounded really fucking weird.
Yeah, like
I mean, I would have gone without question.
Oh yeah,
I would have gone, but it sounded really fucked up. So
I feel like one of the times I went to Florida, I drove by where they had this show, but it wasn't obviously still going, but they still had the marquee up and stuff. This wasn't that long ago, maybe like 10 years ago, but I could be totally thinking of something else.
Didn't they say it was like the same building that was like a medieval times type place?
Yeah, I think they talked about that in the 30 for 30.
Okay. So,
and now it's something different, but I don't remember what it is. Maybe a mall or some other show. I don't know. But
right.
Yeah, then they kind of just go into some of the things that everybody's into, like Zap is a golf pro or something in the summer and a snowboard instructor in the winter. Mm-hmm. Nitro's what do you call it? Motivational speaker, Laser, who was featured really heavily in the whole doc, who I barely remember. He was like the longest running gladiator.
I can't hear Laser without thinking of Dodgeball. And they're like, they got lasers and glazers and all kinds of lasers over there. I know it's really dumb, but every time I hear, especially because I do love that movie Dodgeball, every time I hear them say laser in that, I was like, the lasers and glazers and all kinds of azers. So
he has like part of a fitness company or something.
Yeah.
One of them, Sky, who I didn't know who that was, is on OnlyFans. She shows her muscular feet. Ice is on TikTok, and she's brought. So if you want to follow, I think her name's Lori Federick, and on TikTok, and you can see all your gladiator
podcast together or something.
Yeah, Zap and her have a podcast together. And so that's kind of that rounds up the show. They kind of go in. A lot of it is when they talk to Nitro, especially at the end, he kind of goes into his issues that he had as a child, and maybe he was looking for all this approval. Don't want to minimize that, but that's in there too. So yeah, that's the rundown of the show. I was really surprised how candid some of them got about the show, about the drug use, about their pasts. I mean, it's all over and done with. You can't go back and change it. But
I feel like if this was made 10 years ago, they probably wouldn't have said as much that they did.
Oh, sure.
But I feel like society in general is a lot more willing to be like, yeah, people do dumb things, and more so than they were even 10 years ago with something like that.
It seems like if you do the dumb stuff that offends people, then your life is over. But if you do stuff that now is, and not offending everybody, just offending two people on Twitter that can.
Well, I think the steroids and the drug stuff is probably low on the level,
right?
Yeah, as far as offending people at this point, I think more people are like, "Oh, well, you need help then." Okay.
Yeah. Oh, this isn't your fault. This is it's the addiction's fault, the disease. Which I'm not minimizing that either, but
but like I said, I think if this was 10 years ago when they started making these docuseries, I don't think we would have gotten as candid as a look at that as what we did in 2023.
Yeah, and I think too, it's so far removed. We're like almost 20 years removed at this point from anything, but they do very briefly show, like I said, the international gladiators, talk about the different ones around the world. You said the UK thing, and I wanted to say it when you brought it up, but they show a real quick, like 2-second clip of the UK Gladiators, and there is a guy that looks like a 50-year-old guy with like white streaks in his long hair, and I was like, that guy looks like he would be a UK Gladiator. He just looked like a 50-year-old bodybuilder.
Come out with
dude.
some bangers and mash in each hand.
Sure, can't say I know what that is. Isn't that like potatoes and something?
I think so. I don't know.
You run
podcasts. You run podcasts. Let's talk horror. One of you guys let us know what bangers and mash are, so we can know how ignorant we are with this conversation. So,
yeah. Why is Yorkshire pudding a pudding? Isn't it like a pastry? Anyways, I think the big difference, like I said earlier, is that this Netflix series is more, and you kind of said it too, it's a little bit more of the they did have a lot of producers. They had the director, they had, some other people. They go into a little bit more of like the inner workings of the show, the family aspect of it, the family being the Gladiators kind of coming together as a family. They got their side of it. Whereas the ESPN one, like I said, was a little bit more, it was a little bit more salacious, a little bit more gossipy. They kind of went for a different angle, kind of showing what a buffoon Johnny Ferraro is. It
felt like the Cinemax version of a docuseries on this.
Yeah, and I felt like the Netflix one was more of a oral history, like behind the scenes documentary, whereas the 30 for 31 just seemed like it was more of like, ooh, we'll tell you all the bad stuff that happened.
I did find it interesting though that in this one, the Netflix one, there's no mention of Apache Dan at all. Like, there's no mention of Pittsburgh. There's no mention of him, of that other dude who was supposedly the first, like any of that, like backstory stuff, anything basically before Johnny Ferraro showed up and pitched the show, like none of that, like, and none of it throughout any point of this entire episode, this entire docuseries. They just skip over that whole thing completely, which I guess in retrospect, hearing both stories, who knows how much they actually knew about this random guy in Pittsburgh who's claiming credit for all this. Like, I bet they probably know a lot about it now, but at the time, if you're going to work and you're doing like whatever your job is, are you really concerned about what your boss 40 levels up is fighting about with some other rando in fucking Pittsburgh?
Well, I was going to say, they probably had no idea any of that stuff happened, because it sounds like a lot of the stuff, like they had that guy in Erie that was like the iron worker, and he was promised he would be like the first gladiator or whatever. None of those people had any clue that this promise was made. It's just like the backdoor shit that people are doing so that, it's like, I don't know, you promise somebody tickets to a concert or so. Oh, when I see you next time, I'll buy you a drink or, something like that. Right. It's like, if the person that you told doesn't remember, you're never going to tell them that. You're never going to bring it up. You're just saying it to get them off your back. So that's kind of what a lot of the Johnny Ferraro, I mean, he was an Elvis impersonator, for fuck's sake. It sounds like he basically was, he would just tell people what they wanted to hear so he could get what he wanted. I mean, that's pretty much what it comes down to.
I gotta say too, I'm kind of disappointed that we never got to, at least I never got to see Roller Games, which they talk about as.
You never watched that?
No, and they talk about it as like
that show.
So there was one thing that really caught my attention when they brought it up. This is in episode 1 or 2, but Roller Games is essentially a roller derby show, which you would have sold me on that right there. Like, roller derby is criminally underrated as far as a sport or competition in this country,
or entertainment,
whatever it is, it's great.
Sure, yeah.
But when they were dragging crocodiles down to put into the middle of the rink, I was like, "What? Let's do 30 for 30 on this." So
they didn't tell you because they didn't show enough of it. But it wasn't a rink. The Roller Games arena was a figure 8, and it went up high. So they would have like this lower rink.
So they were nowhere near. They were nowhere near the crocodile.
I think that they had them out there at first, and then they would take them off. But the whole thing,
games.
They would go around and then up this kind of like embank, like a group of skaters would go up and around this kind of banked wall, like an indoor bike track. They have the big banked wall, and that you would throw your slammer or whatever the hell those, I don't know all the names of the positions, but they would throw the people that would score points. One of them would have a helmet, and that would be the one that, you'd have to, if you get past them. But they used to show it here locally in the Detroit area on like 32 before 30. I don't know if 32 is like a real thing now. I want to say, or 38, channel 38.
It's over there.
Yeah, it was a UHF
I never
channel.
got that. So I never got that channel. That might be why I didn't see it. So.
I had one of those, like, 2 through 7, and then and then 8 through whatever, or 2 through 13. I had one of those, and I remember, like, Sundays you'd be bored as shit with no cable and flipping through things like, oh, channel 62 is a channel, oh, okay, cool, they're showing a new dance show. No, I
could never get the ears to go. Yeah. So if you didn't know, we're kind of old based off this conversation. So
I watched it on a black and white TV, if that, and not because that was new. That's just what I had.
Yeah, I think for a while I had a black and white TV, and then when someone died, I inherited a shitty color TV, and I thought I was like really moving up in the world. So
yeah, when I got to play my Nintendo on a color TV, that's when I knew I was moving. My status was climbing.
Did your mother tell you that the Nintendo was ruining her TV also? Because my mom was convinced that it was breaking the TV based off, I don't really know what, but
probably burn-in or something.
No, that's not what she claimed. She claimed because she claimed like the controller or something was. I don't know. I never really got the logic behind it, but
for me,
it didn't stop me from playing the NES at the time. So
my Atari 2600 was ruining the big TV that was in the big wooden case. But was the backgrounds never changed. Most of those games had more than one screen.
She also accused me of ruining our first computer, but that was 100% accurate. I did ruin the shit out of that computer. So
you poured Coke all over the keyboard.
Well, that, and I think as soon as I found out, like, oh, LimeWire's a thing, and downhill. So
oh, geez, we're talking late computer at that point.
That was our first
on the online. Jeez.
Yeah, my mom thought she was going to open her own quote unquote computer service like business out of our basement. I'm like, what are you going to do? She's like, I'm going to type stuff. I'm like, I don't think people are going to pay you for that. She made no money. So
successful business.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I digress. Gladiators. So
yeah. So that's basically that's the thing. Do we want to give hot dogs on this? I know that we do give hot dogs on some TV shows.
I mean, we can. Do you have anything else you want to kind of touch on, but like out of sequence before we get into that? No, I kind of gave my two big things. Like
I think I've said enough.
Okay. Well, that's fair. So,
I took notes.
Yeah, I did not. I just kind of watched, and I started to take notes, and I realized I was missing things as I was taking notes, and so I guess this will just kind of lead into our ratings because I'm gonna spiel for a minute or two. I mean, most of this just is really, it's borderline autobiographical in a way. It's really just these several monstrous human beings telling their story, and that's cool. Like, that's actually really entertaining. From the Gladiators side of it, like, there's some dark things that happen here, but it's not like, and then Malibu went and murdered this guy on the street. There's no like shit like that in this. Like, it's not a dark, like, most of this is typical. Like, if you told me you had a bunch of bodybuilders hanging out on a tour bus in the early 90s, this is the exact kind of shit I would expect them to get into, and they just tell you about it. So there's really nothing too shocking in this to me. But it does kind of make you want to go back and watch. It makes you kind of yearn for this kind of show, and it kind of makes me realize, like, oh, this is why I like shows like one that I'm not going to say right now because it's my answer for our question of the week that we haven't got to, but like, was it MKX or whatever? MXC, whatever. Ninja Warrior, all that type of crap. Like, okay, this is very clearly like the DNA for those types of shows, and that's fine. As a whole, I'd say if you have if you find our Wrestler Corner chats entertaining, which if you do, let us know because we'll keep doing them. If you don't, we'll probably keep doing them anyway.
Yeah, if you don't, we'll still do them anyways.
Right. But if you like those types of things, especially if you came up in that era, like American Gladiators was a force at that time. There's no way you couldn't know about this. So it definitely hits that nostalgia bone. It definitely it's cool to see these characters that you watched as a kid, like as growner ups or something like that, more grown ups. Um, but there's also, like I said, there's no real bombshell in this one. There's nothing in this that leaves your jaw on the floor or anything along those lines. So, I mean, this for me, like I'd probably give this like 6.5 roided up hot dogs out of 10 hot dogs. It's entertaining. It's good. I don't feel bad about watching it. I got through it, I think, in two or 3 days, something like that. 5 episodes. That's not too bad. Um, I don't think this is the type. Like I said, I just don't think there's enough in here that's really gonna make you like go like, wow, that was a really really fascinating docu series. It is, but not to that extent for me.
Yeah, I think for me, I'd probably give it like seven hot dogs out of 11 blown out ACLs. I don't. I think between the two. I'm glad you were drinking when I said that. I think between the two, I liked the Netflix one better. I mean, I did like the ESPN one because it came out first. It was like, oh, holy shit, they're going to do an American Gladiators documentary. I got to see this. And then you watch it, and they try to be very entertaining. They try to, like I've said several times, they try to be very just salacious, try to be very hot takey and, like, oh, hey, they're going to find out all the dirty details of all this stuff. And it's like, in the end, it's just a goofball who, whatever, he hit a good idea. Now he's just going to ride it into the ground until he dies. And then I think the second one, because you didn't hear from a lot of the gladiators that you knew and that you wanted to hear from in the ESPN one, whereas they got them all here on the Netflix one, except Saber's the only one that you don't really see much between the two. And like I said, he showed up so late in the series that it was kind of like, I don't remember him being around so early. Well, that's because he wasn't. I just think if you're into, like you said, if you're into the wrestling corner stuff that we talk about, if you're into the behind the scenes stuff, if you're like a nostalgia, I don't know, junkie, this is a definite show, because growing up in this era, there's no way you didn't see the show or at least hear about it. There's, Bill Hicks is my favorite comedian. He has a bit about American Gladiators, for shit's sake. Like, pituitary R words, smashing their heads together, et cetera, et cetera. American Gladiators. The president Bill Clinton talked about American Gladiators. It was like a show
they popped up on The Simpsons several times.
So. And I remember as a kid going to my friend's house in the backyard and doing joust, or like, we'd pretend we were doing the Eliminator obstacle course, or just stupid stuff like that little kids do, and they kind of talk about a little bit in the series, but how kids looked up to them, and they when they saw how much little kids thought that they were like superheroes, it really changed their mind on some of the activities, some of the behaviors that they were involved in, and nothing serious, just like, maybe I shouldn't be such a druggie, maybe I shouldn't be, fucking so many chicks or whatever. I mean, they probably still did, but it kind of gave them a little bit of a different perspective on it. I really like I really like the Netflix one a lot better, but I think both of them have value. I'd probably give the ESPN one like 6 out of 11, but I would give the Netflix version 7 out of 11. Broken ACLs, blown out ACLs, I think is what I said.
I definitely agree with you that the Netflix one, if you're only going to watch one, then the Netflix one is definitely way better. You get a lot more of the gladiators, like you said, which is, you're not tuning in to see. Yeah, that's the whole reason why you're watching it. And having them come out so close together, like, I really feel like the ESPN one, again, in retrospect, probably got rushed to get ahead of it, because I got a feeling no one, if you saw them in the other order, like if you saw this one, the Netflix one first, and then went to the ESPN one, you'd probably be pretty disappointed with the ESPN one, because, like I said, no one's on it. So
yeah, and they're about the same runtime. I mean, if you throw them both together, you got about 3 hours on the first one, and this one's with 5 episodes, probably about 3. It's probably right on 3. I think that first episode's only 35 minutes.
It did go by quick, but I mean, either way. So. Question of the week. So we had a question of the week. We did it late though, so there's not a lot of answers this week. So it's not like the last one where went too long. So our question of the week this week is, what is your favorite physical game show? Only had 2 replies this week. So I'm going to probably butcher this, but you might know this show. I had to ask.
Who did you ask?
So
The person who responded?
Ebony 061 from Film Sort Pod, she responded to this. She said the Takeshi's Castle.
Oh, Takashi's. Yeah, that's MXC.
Takashi's? Okay.
Yeah,
So
Takashi's Castle.
Okay. So it's basically the same thing, or is it actually a different show?
It's the same thing. Takashi's Castle is the show, but MXC is they recut the show to then dub it to make it like funny. So Takashi's Castle is like Wipeout. Is like the Japanese Wipeout. It's like the first. Remember in like the 90s, probably early 90s, you'd always see, oh, they have these crazy shows in Japan where people are blah 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 blah. You know, they have the that's what they were always talking about was Takashi's Castle.
All right. Well, there we go. So Pete from MCFC, who is at The Real Pete, which has a lot more ease than you would expect. I'm not going to count those right now. He said Supermarket Sweep or Family Double Dare. I forgot about Double Dare and Family Double Dare. That would be a show that would probably have some fun backstories on it.
Like I feel like production. There was a doc about Double Dare. Or maybe because Mark Summers was making the rounds. Which Supermarket Sweep? Because they have a new version that Leslie Jones was hosting.
The comedian?
Yep.
The one from SNL?
SNL, yeah.
I'm not sure that's a good thing. I like Leslie Jones. I like her as a comedian, but I don't know that would translate to game show host.
Yeah, I think it was tough because it seemed like she showed up to the set and they're like, we're doing a show. And she's like, okay. Like there wasn't a lot of like, advance preparation going into the show. Like it seemed like she got the questions right when she got them. And that's the first time she'd ever seen them. But yeah, Supermarket Sweep was great. I love Supermarket Sweep. It's not my favorite.
I'm not sure I would call it physical either, but okay.
They had to run around that goddamn store.
Yeah.
Dump all those hams. Wham Bam Christmas ham. They had to throw them into the cart and only take
that was one of my sick day shows. I think it came on like an hour or so after Price is Right. So,
if you have Buzzer is a local channel, and it's on cable too. But they show all old game shows. So like old match game, but they show Supermarket Sweep. So you could read.
They're always doing so No Whammy, whatever that show was.
Press Your Luck with Peter.
That's on like every time that I flip through that channel. So
I have an insane vault of useless game show knowledge.
Good. So what's your Sean? What is your answer to the question of the week? What is your favorite physical game show?
I really liked American Gladiators at the time, and I liked Takashi's Castle. I like MXC more than Takashi's Castle because I think with all the comedic kind of, parts to it, it makes it a little bit of just a better show to watch. But I have to say, I think my favorite physical game show is Wipeout because I love seeing people get hurt, but not too hurt.
So I have the same answer, and what I really like about Wipeout is really just the first. It was probably the first half hour, the first segment of the show. Not once they got to the
big course.
Yeah, once they got to once they condensed it to lesser people, and more, it got less interesting for me. But I like that it became very apparent that this wasn't a obstacle course that was based on timers. There was someone hitting buttons that was saying, "Nope, you fall off now." Yeah. And that's what made it fun to me because you would see people trying to outsmart the course, and it never worked. So,
did you ever watch Holy Moly?
Yeah, I had high expectations for that, and I didn't think it was all that great.
I like that they as it went on, like the seasons that went. The first season was kind of rough because it seemed like it was the same, like maybe 4 obstacles each show. Yeah. They started adding more things, but that has really serious Wipeout vibes to it because they have they have Joe Tessitore.
Is that still on?
It would have been back. It's a summer show. So if it's going to be back, it'll be back soon, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think I think it's gone. Because the last season was like they had the Muppets and stuff on the like a regular reoccurring thing on the show.
I remember giving that show like maybe 3 or 4 episodes, and it wasn't working for me, and I never went back to it. So but I when they said it, they're like it's putt-putt, but with Wipeout. I was like, well, I love the concept. So
I love there's an obstacle where they have to hit the ball down this real narrow, skinny like line, and then if it goes through, they have to run down that same line. That's all these porta-johns lined up, but they only have like 3 seconds to get down the entire thing. And when they hit 3 seconds, everybody that's inside opens the doors, so they get smashed in the face or they get like knocked off. That's my favorite part. Yeah, no, it's Terabad. It's great.
Nice. Maybe I'll have to go back and find that. That's probably available somewhere. So, all right, I think that's all we got. I mean, we're running long for us here. Is there anything else you want to hit on this? Any other game shows that are worth talking about? Am I the only one who doesn't really care for American Ninja Warrior? Like, I've watched a handful of episodes, but I just kind of
I liked. Oh, so I guess that's the Sasuke or whatever, the one that the Ninja Warrior that they used to show in G4, the Japanese one. I really like that. But the thing that I don't like, and they probably did it in the Japanese one too, but they cut it for time, I think, is that the American one, I like it to be a competition where I like competitions to be competitions where the people don't like each other. They are so like up their own ass. It turns it into like every... And I hope this doesn't come across the wrong way, and I might just edit this out in the actual version. Everything is like, it's like the Olympics, where everybody has some sad story. Everybody's like, they train in the ninja course, but they, on their spare time, they coach like the Special Olympics team to do rowing. Or it's just like everybody has some kind of sob story, and they're all clapping for each other, and it's like, I don't want that guy to win. I want to win. You know what I mean? And everybody's trained. It's all happy. Everybody's all happy about it. They're all like on the sidelines cheering each other on. And they did do that on the Japanese one, but it's so like sappy. It's just too saccharine for me to watch. It's too sweet.
So I'm gonna go radio for 2 for a second here, but when you come out this way, do you go up M5 and Martin Parkway?
They have that Ninja Warrior course?
I was going to say, I just saw that yesterday when I drove. I haven't driven that way in a while. I was like, there's a Ninja Warrior training course, like, 5 miles from my house? Well,
that's been there for like 10 years.
Really? So I haven't paid attention then.
Yeah.
I know it's been a gym for like 10 years. I didn't know that it was doing that. So
it is. Yeah, my kid she was really into watching Ninja Warrior for a time. And it got to the point where she was probably like 3rd or 4th grade, and she's like, I can do all the monkey bars like in this big sequence without falling off. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And she was really into it. Like, we would watch it, and she was like, I'm going to train for yeah. Oh, cool. Good for you. I can't do it because I'm too tall, and I probably couldn't do it anyways. But she was real into it, and we would watch the show, and then after a while, she just kind of fell off of it. It's, like, it's probably a lot of it's just too much. They get a little nugget of something good, and then it's on every night for like, it's like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, when that got really big, and then it was on every night, and you're like, well, you just totally killed this. I have no desire to ever watch this again.
Yeah, I always wonder how a show like that one in particular manages to keep its funding. Like, if people win, aren't you going to go fucking broke? Like,
sponsors. Got to show more commercials. Comes out of Regis's pocket.
Unfortunately for us, we don't have sponsors, and I don't think
a beer sponsor.
About. Yeah, there we go. So, Jeff, if you're listening, we work
any brewery, local, doesn't have to be local. Anybody, we'll take it. Payless shoes. I love Bro Wings. Let's do it.
They have Airwalks now. So.
Really? At Payless?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know they carried name brand stuff.
I didn't know Airwalks were still making shoes until I saw them at a Payless.
It's owned by Nike.
Is it? Payless? or
No.
Airwalk?
Airwalk.
Oh,
Or they were.
all right. So fair enough. So Nike is the Budweiser of the shoe world. Got it. That shouldn't surprise me at all. All right. I think that's all we got for this week. Is there anything that we want to tack on here? Good. Let's get the fuck out of here. So, I would strongly recommend, if you're going to follow us, that you do it definitely on Instagram and other spots, because Twitter is being increasingly stupid lately. But we're available on all these social networks, including stupid Twitter, at Dewey Pod Monster. Of course, you can always check our website, which is crap.town. That has all our previous episodes, and that's pretty much it. But you can leave us feedback on there as well. Yeah. And then also, if you could follow us on this YouTube channel, that would probably be a good thing too. So you could see when we do these live recordings and talk to ourselves and have radio for two. Sean, what are you doing?
And look up IMDb profiles and whatnot.
Yeah, that too. So
you can find me and all my craft beer adventures at youtube.drafttherapy.com. I talk about mostly Michigan beer. We have on occasion gone out to places and talked to people. We'd like to talk to more people out in those places. And you can follow me on all the social media at Draft Therapy. Also, if you'd like your answer read on the question of the week, follow us on Instagram and all the socials at Dewey Pod Monster, and we'll probably read your answer because we don't get that many.
Aside from last week, yeah, we don't get that many. Last week we got a shit ton. Tom Atkins has that power.
Yeah, he's a sexy man. So
yeah, it's absolutely right. High life and all. So that's all we got. We'll talk to you next week. Cheers.